This is Will Kennedy, and I am one of the two City Council members who oppose Measure J, and I'd like to state the reasons why. I have prepared a list of the top 10 reasons against Measure J along with Councilmember Jamie McLeod, and that list is available at the website santaclaraplaysfair.org. So I'm going to start with the very first reason why I oppose Measure J, and that has to do with the effect of Measure J on our general fund. We did a very extensive economic analysis and found that with the stadium we will have $67 million less in our general fund than if we don't do the stadium. Now, that's a very large difference, especially for a city the size of Santa Clara. Our general fund is about $150 million. So $67 million is roughly 40%, 45%, somewhere in that range. A lot of money for Santa Clara, which we will be losing if we go through with the stadium. Why do I say that? Where does that number come from? Well, it comes from city staff. We had a meeting on June 2nd, 2009. That was the main meeting where the City Council decided to go, as a whole, decided to go ahead with the stadium idea. I was one of the two members who voted no. And during that meeting, there was a slideshow, and slide 48 of that presentation showed this $67 million loss to the general fund. And I asked some questions about that, and you can see a tape of that at santaclaraplaysfair.org. I believe it's up on YouTube. And my question was, as I read this report, we would have $67 million more in our general fund if we didn't do the stadium. And our consultant came up and basically agreed. He agreed that that's the case. Now that point has been completely ignored in all of the brochures that the 49ers have sent out. Most people have no idea that that's the case. But again, this is a number that comes from the city staff. And it has been verified personally by me with our city staff recently to make absolutely certain that it's correct. And it's also been looked at by the Mercury News as they've been reporting on this story as well. So how much is $67 million? Well, as I said, it's enough money to fund our general fund for about 5 months or so. We could pay for all of our police, fire, library, everything for about 5 months with this with this amount of money. We could pay for our entire library system for about 9 years with $67 million. We could completely fund our senior center for over 75 years with $67 million. Like I say, it's a very big loss to give up to have this stadium. Now, I think the stadium would be great. I'm a big football fan, but when it comes to priorities, my priorities are for these city services that I just mentioned. Those have a bigger impact, I think, on the lives of most Santa Clarans compared to a football stadium. Now, how do we get to that number, $67 million? Well, if you look at the slide show that I'm mentioning in slide 48, you'll see that redevelopment money from our redevelopment area in northern Santa Clara, which would go to our general fund, instead is going to the stadium. That causes a $67 million loss. There's other losses related to the stadium, the fact that we have to give up land that we might be able to later lease out. Other losses all add up to actually a $98 million loss in today's dollars. However, we do get some income from the stadium. We are expecting to receive some income, so we make a little bit of that back. But how much do we get back? Well, we're looking in today's dollars because that's what staff did. Staff consistently used today's dollars to look at the costs and the benefits of having the stadium. So in today's dollars, what do we get back? Well, one of the things we get back is rent. The 49ers will pay some rent to us, and that's good, but how much rent is it? Well, the city staff says that the total rent of the total value of all of the rent that the 49ers will pay over the 40-year lease is just $8 million. $8 million. Well, if you look at what the 49ers are paying for some of their other expenses, 49ers paid over $8 million, about $8.7 million to one player for 1 year last year, their defensive end. So that's not very much rent. I mean, 40 years of rent is less than what they're paying one player for 1 year. Now, you're probably getting brochures from the 49ers in the mail, and most of them say, well, we're actually paying $40 million of rent. Not $8 million, $40 million. Well, how do we explain that difference? Well, one way that we explain it is, the main way we explain is that the 49ers are using nominal values. So for example, a lot of the rent that the 49ers are going to pay, actually most of it because it's kind of backloaded, is they're going to pay maybe 30 years from now. Well, our city staff and most economists would say a dollar that's paid in 30 years is actually worth much less than that. Turns out it's about 16 cents. Well, the 49ers don't ignore inflation. They count that dollar as a full dollar. And they use that consistently in all of their brochures. But when you're looking at the benefits and the cost of a stadium, you need to use today's dollars so you can compare apples with apples. Now, another part of what we earn back from the stadium is we get a percentage of the profits from soccer games and any concerts, rock concerts, that sort of thing that we might be able to have there. The total value of that in today's dollars, according to staff, is just $18 million. Again, not a lot given that the city has to put in they have to put in $114 million towards this project, all within the next few years. But we do get $18 million. Now the 49ers will use a much, much higher number in their brochures. Again, they're using nominal values and not really paying any attention to, they're completely ignoring inflation. So that's the reason why there's this discrepancy between what we're going to get and what we put in, and it results in a $67 million loss. Now you'll see in the 49ers brochure that there's no impact to the general fund. That's a claim that they have made many times. No impact to the general fund. That claim is false, and it's shown to be false by slide 48 of the presentation. Everybody should take a quick look at that slide and see what it says. The 49ers are saying no impact to the general fund, but our city staff is not. What they will say is no obligation to the general fund. And that is true, but it's quite different. And here's what's happening with the stadium deal. Money that is going to go to the general fund, or would go to the general fund, is diverted and spent elsewhere. It's spent on the stadium. So yes, we're not taking money out of the general fund and sending it to the stadium, but we're taking money that would go to the general fund before it ever gets there and sending it to the stadium. So yes, the general fund is not obligated, but the general fund is hurt just as much. So that's the main reason that I oppose the stadium, is because of this $67 million loss to the general fund.